It's been a while, but I think it's about time we return to one of my favorite childhood franchises. By looking at one of its more unusual entries. G.I. Joe Sigma 6 aired from 2005 to 2007, and it was the first G.I. Joe animated series to come out after a fairly long dry spell for the franchise. It was reportedly not well received for a number of reasons. For one, fans didn't care much for the action figures, as they were bulkier than your average G.I. Joe figure, and the strange joints gave them bizarre proportions. Another reason was the drastic change in style for the cartoon. They got Gonzo to work on the show, and did it in the style of an anime, since that was pretty big at the time. That's right, there was once a time where G.I. Joe, the real American hero, went anime. Ha! Marvelous. Clearly they wanted that awful Western cartoon to be of a much more higher quality. Don't gloat so soon, anime snob. It's not really an anime. It was produced specifically for Western television, and it never even got a Japanese dub. I'm still taking this as a victory. Anything for anime to have an advantage over those dreadful Western cartoons. Oh yeah? Well, you're not gonna like who produced this show. A little company called 4Kids Entertainment. Hey, will you look at that? We actually agree on something. Figured we'd talk about them at some point. For those of you who don't know, 4Kids was a production company that produced a lot of TV shows from the 90s all the way through the 2000s. But they were mostly known for localizing anime, especially during the big anime boom that hit the US in the mid-2000s. And they sucked. They just sucked. They were one of the worst localization companies ever. If you wanted to trigger an anime fan in the 2000s, you tell them that 4Kids got a hold of their favorite show. Ugh, I still have nightmares to this day. Most of the problem was they acquired anime not meant for children and tried to market them to children. They did so by editing the shows so much that they became farcical. I don't even like One Piece, and even I'll admit what they did to it was just wrong. Oh, you better not say anything negative about One Piece on the internet. It's overrated! Okay, to be fair, not everything they did was horrible. They were originally responsible for localizing the Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Take that for what it's worth. I hear some people liked the Kirby anime, and I'll admit I actually remember kinda liking the F-Zero anime, though I can't seem to find a good version of it anymore. I even liked their version of Ninja Turtles, but they even managed to screw that up. Then there's Sigma 6. Of all the versions of G.I. Joe, this one seems to be the least talked about. But why though? How could you screw up G.I. Joe? Steel yourselves. We're about to find out. So Cobra Commander escapes from captivity, that we never see him get put into in the first place. So an ailing General Hawk assigns Duke and a team of Joes to stop him. And they even get a brand new state-of-the-art high-tech facility, which Cobra promptly destroys with a giant laser in episode 3. Ooh, the taxpayers are not gonna like that. Fortunately, the team escapes in time and take refuge in one of the vehicles, which becomes their base for the majority of Season 1. Yup, all of G.I. Joe and their fight against Cobra are now operating out of the back of a truck. G.I. Joe! The team consists of a few well-known characters like Duke, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes. I don't think I need to explain them to anyone. But one of the good things about this series is its use of a few Joe characters that are a bit lesser known. We got the Team Muscle, Heavy Duty. I was a bit disappointed my boy Roadblock wasn't on the team, but I'm glad Heavy Duty is in this. He doesn't get used as much in the cartoons. Then there's his buddy and most successful of the Rawhides from G.I. Joe the movie, Tunnel Rat. We will talk more about him later. We also see the second most successful of the Rawhides, Jinx, who's Snake Eye's apprentice, along with a relatively new character named Kamakura. Another character that was new at the time was High Tech, who, in case you couldn't tell, is the tech expert and constantly reminds everyone how great he is at it.
So don't only think of me as the resident genius. I'm a lean, mean cobra snake-kicking machine. Let's show those bats some high-tech mayhem. Did you figure out what's up? No, it's been coated in so many layers I can't crack it. Well, yet. It's based on one of my new designs. You can thank me later.
Hey guys, check it out! I wrote a program that lets me suck myself off! There's also Long Range, who originally was just the driver of the Thunderclap, the world's most overcompensating gun, but they upgraded him a bit and also made him a proficient rifleman. Spirit also shows up, suddenly, in episode 6, with no introduction like the other characters got. Finally, in season 2, the Joes move out of their station wagon and onto the Sea Titan, where they're joined by Lieutenant Stone, who actually debuted in... You know what, it's not important. There are also 2 characters that operate the consoles on the Sea Titan, but I don't know who they are. Is that Dial Tone? Is that Breaker? I have no idea. I don't think they ever say their names. I even tried looking it up and I couldn't find them credited anywhere. I wouldn't have spent so much time on this, but they show up a lot and they get involved in so much I couldn't believe they didn't bother at least name dropping them. Not much is different on the Cobra side. You got Cobra Commander, Destro, Baroness, Storm Shadow, Firefly, Zartan, and the Dreadnoughts. The only relatively new character is Overkill, a cyborg that controls all of Cobra's robot soldiers. I gotta admit, I like his design here. The torn up body floating in a tank of fluid with tubes coming out of him looks cool. Though his voice kind of ruins the effect.
I'll force that blustering bully to kneel down before my tank. I've waited for this moment my entire synthetic life.
Behold the voice of pure evil. He also has delusions of taking over Cobra, but nothing ever comes of it. Usually Destro's the one trying to take over, but here he seems way too on board with Cobra Commander's plans. I think I saw him get mad at Cobra Commander once, but that was pretty much it. Why establish a potential internal conflict if you're not going to do anything with it? That brings us to one of the major problems about this show. It's so inconsistent. They seem to randomly introduce plot points and either don't follow up on them like with Overkill, or without establishing them first. In episode 6, we find out that Cobra is after something called Power Stones.
According to our intel, there's a power stone located in this swamp.
Fine, then let's start scanning this mud hole.
That scene is the first we ever hear about them. No exposition telling us what they are or how they know about them. Granted, it's pretty easy to figure out, but you can't just throw new plot elements at us like that. Case in point, early on we meet Scott, who's General Hawk's son. Yeah, they threw a kid into this show. He's a young genius, because of course he is, who built a robot dog and programs him with data he got while hacking into Cobra's mainframe. Cobra eventually goes after the dog so they can use it to pilot a giant robot. This is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. But the weird part is that we hardly ever see Scott or the dog throughout Season 1. How do you introduce a MacGuffin this big and hardly use it? Then again, I shouldn't be upset that they introduced a tag-along kid character and he didn't show up that much. Also, they showed his friends in one episode, and I think they tried to make them into regular characters. But I guess it didn't work out since they only show up once.
Will you please stop zoning out? Hey! Earth
Right
to
this
Scott!
Something's going on with those two.
I wouldn't know. This is the first time I'm seeing them. So let's address the elephant in the room. This is a 4Kids show, so it's time to outline all the things they screwed up. First off is the theme song. 4Kids is notorious for creating cringeworthy theme songs for all their shows, and Sigma 6 is no exception.
Sigma 6, be a hero. G.I. Joe will turn the tide. Be a hero. Sigma 6 is on your side. Take command, heavy duty on the scene. Snake eyes, hand to hand. Long range, lean and mean.
Make it stop! Make it stop! I'm torn between my hatred of this song and my hatred of anime snob.
Wherever they attack, G.I. Joe will fight. There's no turning back. Yo, Joe!
You know what? The song wins. Shut it down! Thank you. I didn't do this for you. Speaking of music, they also had a nasty habit of adding terrible synth music to the background of their shows. And sometimes it drowns out the dialogue.
I need results, not more delays and excuses. I want the technical problem solved immediately.
Then there's the voice cast. 4Kids always stuck to the same voice actors in all of their shows, and while some of them, like Dan Green and Eric Stewart, are fine voice actors, every time I hear them, all I hear is Yugi and Kaiba.
Some kind of robotic soldiers. The power readings are off the scale.
They're arming weapons! They're opening fire!
Then there's this weird moment. So 4Kids is notorious for editing and censoring anime, right? Well, there's this scene where they go to Vegas and Scarlet makes Tunnel Rat upset, but then Cobra shows up and this happens.
This is heavy duty. We just spotted Destro walking through our hotel. Tunnel Rat passed out from the excitement.
I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be drunk in that scene. But then they censored it? Hey 4Kids, you know you made this show, right? You can just make it however you want. You don't have to censor yourselves. Then there's the typical anime stuff I don't like how the designs are good, but the animation is so cheap. The action scenes look okay, but there's so many scenes they keep reusing, like Cobra Commander sitting on his throne giving orders. Saves a lot of time when you can't see the character's mouth. Also gotta love how they just stand there while only a few frames of their mouths move. Anime sure is great. Fool! Obviously they're going for subtlety. How? Well, they want to leave more to the imagination. Clearly this is a thinking man's anime. Why do I even bother? It's like arguing with a 5-year-old. I want to watch Boruto! Shut up! Okay, I'll be fair here and say there are a few things I do kind of like about this show. I like how Firefly started out as a Joe, but eventually turned out to be a spy. And the fact that he was originally under the command of Lieutenant Stone made things interesting and personal for them. It was a pretty good story arc. The stuff with Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes was done well. Then again, it's kind of hard to screw up Snake Eyes. Just have him not talk and be awesome. I thought the character designs looked cool, even if they didn't translate well to the action figures. The tech stuff was cool too, the weapons were pretty awesome, and I liked the robots. Though I prefer the designs of the original bats. The fact that they looked more human and were hard to destroy made them more threatening.
We keep blasting, but they don't drop. There ain't no way to make them stop.
I loved this version of Cobra Commander. He's really aggressive and no nonsense. I love that he was willing to get his hands dirty and fight the Joes directly. It's like they gave him a bit of Serpentor's personality. Not a fan of his uniform, though. It looks like they tried to combine his two iconic looks into one, and it just looks dumb. See, that's another thing about the show. Even when I find something I like about it, there's usually some little thing that bugs me. Such as this. At the beginning of the series, Heavy Duty gets a cut on his nose, so he puts a band-aid on it. But for some reason, he keeps the band-aid on for the entire series. Why? The cut wouldn't have taken that long to heal. Why would he keep it on? It makes no sense. Then there's when they prepare for a mission. High-Tech usually pulls up everyone on the computer and they have this whole sequence where they assign the ones going on the mission. Why do they gotta do all this just to prepare for a mission? It's so pointless. What are you preparing for? You're always preparing. Just go! Some decisions were just kinda strange. It seemed they tried to give Scarlet a southern accent, I think. As far as I know, she's never had one, but I do like that they tried to give her one since she is from the South and all. But it was so inconsistent.
Well, I, for one, am just glad to finally be able to take a coffee break.
High-Tech, we need your help to get out of here now. Can you give us an escape route?
Then there's what they did with Long Range. They made him Mexican. How do I know he's Mexican? Because every once in a while he abruptly blurts out stuff like this.
Ay, caramba! Ay, Dios mío, not again! Muy caliente, hombre!
Jeez, it's like he's got racist Tourette's.
I got a really bad feeling about this!
Long Range!
Huh?
They didn't get the Dragonhawk or the Vamp!
Vámonos!
You know, just because you have a character that's from a place doesn't mean you have to make them sound like they're from that place. Because sometimes this happens.
Well, your plan sounds pretty risky to me, amigo. This is like throwing a fiesta, and we're the piñata.
If you think that's bad, check out the scene of the dreadnoughts in Japan.
You're off your rocker, Machete. You said these kimonos would help us blend in.
There's been some kind of mistake. Maybe the cruiser dropped us off in the wrong blooming country. Nobody's dressed right.
I don't know, mate. If you ask me, your grasp of the facts is a bit dodgy.
Trust me, I'm an expert on Japanese culture. I've watched tons of samurai movies.
Why didn't this have a Japanese dub again? Okay, time to get this over with. I hate Tunnel Rat in this show. He's one of the most incompetent and infuriating characters I have ever seen. He's loud, he's obnoxious, and he's constantly doing stupid things that piss off the rest of the team.
I got a major crisis!
This is no time for goofing around, Tunnel Rat.
This ain't no joke!
Tunnel Rat, you're a disaster!
A disaster?
Tunnel Rat was always portrayed as a smartass, sure, but he was also clever and resourceful, and he had a knack for solving problems. You know, he was useful. This Tunnel Rat is a buffoon, and he eats bugs. Yeah, every time he sees a bug, he goes out of his way to eat it, like he's Beetlejuice or something. It's so bad that he even blows their cover during a mission.
ID yourself.
I'm the bug exterminator.
Step against the wall. Move it, twerp.
This version of Tunnel Rat may be the worst G.I. Joe character I have ever seen. So far. But you know what the worst thing about this show is? They did it again! At the end of season 1, they act like Duke was killed, but later he comes back. Yup, they faked out Duke's death yet again. Well, at least this time it seemed to be on purpose rather than an awkward edit. Boy, isn't that ironic. The thing is, they kept playing it up like he actually died, but we constantly cut back to him and see that he was okay. Not that I expected them to kill him off anyway. This is a 4-kids show after all. Death doesn't exist. And it's not like I want to see Duke killed off, but if you're not going to do it, then don't do it. Why does nobody have the balls to kill off a character anymore? That doesn't count! Okay, before we end this, something's been brought to my attention. Sigma 6 is supposed to be a sequel series. It's supposed to directly follow those direct-to-DVD CGI movies. Yeah, anyone remember these? I barely do, so I had to rewatch them. They're, not great. Mostly because of the awful CGI. But they do have loose ties to Sigma 6. Characters like Kamakura and High Tech made their debut in these movies, and in Valor vs. Venom, General Hawk gets mutated by Cobra and is shown recovering in the hospital at the beginning of the series, which is good continuity. However, this doesn't work at all. For one, there are a lot more Joes in these movies, and they all appear to be similar to their original designs. Some personalities were way different, like Cobra Commander being more like his old comedic self. But the worst part is that Duke apparently has amnesia because he doesn't remember any of this. Or his Joe name. Or even what Cobra is.
2 weeks out of special ops and I'm off to see the legendary General Hawk. All they told me was to pack my bags and that I had a new code name, Duke.
Ever hear of an organization called Cobra?
How does he not know any of this? He was there when it happened. There's a flashback in episode 1 where they use footage from the movies. Look, he's right there. Oh my god. This show is a train wreck. Sigma 6 suffers from a problem I like to call trying too hard. It could have been good, but it spent more time on the tech and trying to look cool rather than focus on important things, like competent storytelling and making the characters likable. And there was so much more about it that was weird or stupid that I had to leave out because by now I think I've made my point. It's no wonder why this was the most forgotten G.I. Joe series. And it doesn't help that it had a weak DVD release. First Strike contains the miniseries, which is essentially the first 5 episodes, and the other 2 each have 1 episode. What idiot puts one 22-minute episode on 1 DVD? It's a waste of a disc. But in conclusion, Sigma 6 is an overglorified toy commercial and nothing more. But you know what? It's still not the worst G.I. Joe series. We're looking at that next.
Oh no! Freezer burn is...
Sleeping.